I'd not really heard a lot of the Smiths. I knew when This Charming Man came out and Hand in Glove, I knew of the Smiths because I was in a band called Aztec Camera in 1983, and they were on Rough Trade, the Smiths label. So I knew of them that way, and you know, Jeff Travis knew the Smiths, obviously. You know, the people at Rough Trade knew all the Smiths. But I just knew there was this big vibe about the band, and you know, there's loads of hype and everything. And you know, the more I hear about a band like that, the less I'm interested in a way. You know, I don't want to just listen to them for the you know, the reason for all the hype and stuff. But yeah, so I'd heard This Charming Man, Hand in Glove, and later on things like William and Heaven Knows, you know, the singles. I really liked them, but I wasn't, you know, I didn't think there was this great mystique about the Smiths, and you know, I had to find out about them. So you know, I did like them. I thought, you know, great guitars, great songs, and you know, I like Morrissey's lyrics and his voice. But a lot of other people who I knew were fans of the Smiths. I heard This Charming Man, and I think, just looking back so long ago, it just sounded quite eccentric to me, not musically, but you know, lyrically, and because of Morrissey. You know, I'd seen Morrissey, and actually at this point, I saw them at the Hacienda playing live as well, and it was just jam-packed, and there was the flowers all over, and this was, you know, probably they'd been going a few months or a year or whatever, and it was just that was the Smiths image straight up, and the adoration from the crowd straight away. Really, it didn't take years to come, and I saw that when I saw them playing at the Hacienda. At the time, This Charming Man was a hit, and I didn't think too much about it, to be honest, except you know, thinking it was quite eccentric. I didn't think it was a brilliant song or anything, and I think it was the first thing I'd ever heard from the Smiths. I probably hadn't heard Hand in Glove at that point, which had been out before. I suppose it's just one of those things. After I'd heard The Queen Is Dead and all the other songs later on, then you'd hear This Charming Man again and appreciate it for how it was. You know, I really like it as a song. I think it's really good. I do remember listening to the guitars a lot because I was totally into guitar playing then. I mean, I still am, but I was, you know, I was really into guitars and thinking, yeah, you know, good guitars. Nothing new, to be honest. You know, I'd sort of heard a lot of that style of guitar playing before. But yeah, liked it, but obviously I didn't like it enough to start being a fan of the Smiths, whereas other people I knew did. I didn't know the Smiths at all before, apart from knowing what was on the Manchester scene, bands on the Manchester scene. But the first way I came into contact with the Smiths was through Simon Wollstonecroft, who was a drummer. He's played the last few years in the Fall. But I'd played in a band called The Colour Field with Terry Hall, and he was the drummer with that, and we just got on really well, and we stayed in touch over the years. But he was talking about the Smiths all the time, saying he's, you know, his friends. I think he grew up with Johnny and Andy. So he was just, you know, just chatting about the Smiths really, and then just one time he said, Johnny wants to meet you, you know, he'd like to meet you, and you know, thinks we should meet up and all this. He didn't say they were after another guitarist or anything like that. So I think probably around January, probably February, Simon had, you know, we'd swap numbers, and Johnny gave us a call around then, around February '86. The first phone call was just from Johnny, you know, saying, do you fancy getting together, you know, do you fancy coming up to our house? And you know, I'd had feelings that maybe, you know, they were after another guitarist, because there was a few rumours going around with, you know, well, probably, you know, with Simon as well, you know, you probably had mentioned it by that time. So we just arranged for him to pick me up. Johnny came round with his roadie that used to live with him, picked me up, and then we went to Johnny's house. He showed me his studio and played me some new Smiths demos, like things like Big Mouth. And then we just went downstairs, had a drink and a chat, and played a bit of guitar really. And he was just telling me a few things what was happening with the Smiths at that time really. So yeah, it was good. You know, it was a good night. The first thing he said to me is, you know, we're thinking of getting a new bass player because Andy's having a lot of problems with drugs. So So that he was probably feeling me out on that way to see, you know, if I fancied playing bass. And that's where the sort of rumour came from that I was brought in as a bass player. Which, you know, I was never brought in as a bass player. And to play like Andy Rourke, you know, you'd have to be a fantastic bass player, really. So that was as far as it went, bass playing wise, you know. And, you know, he probably mentioned at the time that night that, you know, we might be looking for another guitarist. So that was it, you know, like I say, we went downstairs, started playing guitar a bit, and I thought this isn't just, you know, obviously just being two Manchester guitarists being mates, you know, it was going to be more than that.